has now been around for 3 seasons, and coaches everywhere are saving time and being more efficient when it comes to scout cards. Coach Robinson from Texas says, "The thing I most enjoy is the ease of access to all the scout cards and how I can draw on them if I need to make any changes. Every coach that uses it says that it is so great to use. If you and your staff are tired of the old ways of preparing and using scout cards, check out thecoachpad.com to start enjoying Scout Team and making the 2023 season better than ever."
Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Today we have Coach Val, who has done a clinic for us back in the wee old days of 2020. It's been many a moon since then. Coach Val, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on.
No problem, Coach. Kind of before we get there, his link to his video will be in the bio. So if anybody wants to check out his clinic, he gave almost 3 years. God, 3 years now.
I know.
You can check it out there, but you want to just briefly go over your background and changes the CJ since 2020.
Yeah. So I'm a Minnesota boy, born and raised, moved to Dayton, Ohio in 2012. Got hooked up with Marcus Colvin that year. I was actually the D-line coach in 2012. 2013, I hopped over to the offensive side, and we kind of went from a pro-style offense, lead draw type, to a little bit more of a spread with a little bit more 12 personnel, and I helped the then coordinator Nathan Hyde at that time kind of design that offense. Nathan left the next year. I took over as offense coordinator from 2014, and then in 2016. Maurice Harden, Mo Harden he's out at Xenia now. Me and him did the offense together for 4 years. And then he left again after 2020. And I went to doing it by myself again, 2021. And then Marcus left to take the Beaver Creek job. And we hired Earl White, and we transitioned from a spread personnel, a little bit more of RPO base, to the shotgun double wing, which has been a transition, but it's been pretty good so far. We led the league obviously in rushing. We actually did lead the league in total offense. I imagine Baden would have passed that. They played a few more games, but we were right there in scoring as well. So the offense was still clicking, and the kids kind of really got it going near the end of the year.
Good. You want to talk about that transition? That's
yeah.
I've been in the under center double wing for a brief period of my career. Do you want to kind of talk? And I actually coached against a shotgun double wing team this year.
Okay.
But do you want to talk about that transition from, okay, we're a spread RPO offense? Nice things. Both offenses are based around power concepts. But do you want to talk about the transition from that spread RPO, or reading overhang, or reading somebody and RPOing off them, to we're foot to foot running a double shotgun wing, and power?
So for me, it wasn't as big of a transition, just because we ran so much power, so much counter, so much tight end counter as well. And then I tried to kind of make our guys feel that way. Hey, you know what? We ran power and counter. That's what we do. In 2021, I was really not in very many tight end personnel sets. I was not in very many 11 personnel sets, because we had 4 good wide receivers, and we had a tight end who was very athletic but hadn't played football before, and we ended up needing him more at defensive end. So I want to say in 2021, our offense was probably, I want to say 60 or 70% RPOs. Like, I called RPOs all of the time. There was always a pass option off of runs. There was always a run option off of passes. So we were RPO. Compared to when Coach Harden was with me, we were a little bit more tight end based. But getting into the shotgun double wing, We obviously double teams at the point of attack. It's a big part of it. What I was not used to was having that second puller. So teaching that either the back, some teams will pull the backside tight end, we pull the or some teams will pull the tackle, we pull the tight end. That was a big difference. The splits are a little bit different. The biggest difference for me is with our offense before it's very quarterback centered. The quarterback's got to be a dude. He's got to be able to read. He's got to be able to think. And with me having a senior quarterback that had started 2.5 years for me in 2021, I kind of said, hey, this is if they give you this, you got your choices. Take your leverage. We can run it here if you got numbers. And then I had a good wide receiver that's playing up at Grand Valley State, Owens, and I would just run him on motion. I'd be like, hey, if they don't bump, just flip it out to him. If they do bump, just give the ball. So it was real like simple RPO stuff like that. Where this is a system. This is not necessarily looking for matchups. This is not necessarily looking for leverage, things that you would normally see in a spread offense. You're looking now to, okay, how's the D end playing on the tight end? How's the D end reacting? Things that I guess you would do if you're in a more power encounter, but it's not as big of a problem. One thing I really like out of our double wing set is that they call it the Trojan play. It's just a buck sweep variation. That was actually our most efficient and our most explosive play this year. And honestly, in the offense that me and Mo kind of put together, the play we tried to get to work every year was the buck sweep out of it, and we could never do it. Maybe he's had a little more success with it. Just the angles of that sniffer kind of coming on the down block and sealing him off. It just never really worked very well if you're in that 20 personnel look. Where obviously if you got a fullback, a tight end, a wing back, now you've got the ability to get a double team with the tight end and the wing. Now we're just kicking out a gap over. So when we played Nicholas this year, they're real well coached. We knew they were going to spill and with that guy, and so you just would leave him, and the tight end would block down, and the wing would just wash him down, and you'd be out the gates to the outside. So I really enjoyed that play that I could never really get going very well in the gun. I know some teams have, and I've looked at like some of the Auburn stuff and that, but I've never been able to really get that play to hit as well. As far as the kids, we didn't have a great wide receiver class. We have our best wide receiver actually left us and went to another school. And then we didn't have a quarterback coming in. Our quarterback played wide receiver last year. He was all conference wide receiver in the GCL, but he's also a D1 baseball player. So if we were to run spread last year, we could have, I think. However, I think this was the best situation for it. I mean, he's probably the fastest kid on the team. So when he did get out there, he had a 99.5-yard touchdown run against Edgewood, backed up. I actually hurt my knee on it celebrating. I pulled a grammatica. Yeah. And I was legitimately like hurt. My wife, who's a doctor, she's like, I had about 5 people come up and tell me you were hurt, but I saw you walking, so I just went home. I was like, yeah, I'm okay. But I was just too excited on that night. It was like there was like 30 seconds left in the half too. So got to do stupid stuff every once in a while. But just having a kid like that back there, so now you have the running back is a run threat. The fullback can get the ball on that short snap wedge, which I had never seen before and seen coached like that. Everybody has some variation of the quarterback sneak, but those wedge guys, like Coach White, just telling you how it's supposed to fit and go. It's literally a wedge. And he would run it on like 3rd and 8, and we'd get 9-10 yards on that stinking play. And it always surprised me. But and then just having a running back, our running back this year had 1,200 yards. I think we've had 1 or 2 running backs over 1,000 yards while I've been here. I think we were 1st or 2nd in yards last year as well, but just keeping that tradition of high-powered CJ offenses going. It was good, and it was a transition for the kids. They're used to things being one way and being coached a certain way, and it's part of life. Things change, and it might not always be exactly what you expected, but you got to make the most of it and really get after it.
Now, kind of continuing from there, like, I mean, you obviously that's a transition, and offensively, like formations, general plays are different. Obviously, you're still running power, but it's a little different. But how did I want two-part question is, one, how did your practices change offensively? And then two, how did you have to change any of your drill work for what you were doing?
Coach White kind of let me take charge of the practice plan. What was the biggest transition for us is my understanding, a lot of teams will just do an inside run period while they do Skelly, and we didn't do any of that. We had a long team period. It was 20-25 minutes, which was a little long, but we used to film inside run from the sidelines once a week with Coach Colvin, and we got done we got done with team, and they're like, when are we doing team? I go, we just did team. Because that wasn't inside run. I said, no, that was team. We just run the ball so much. Coach White's, we're going to run the ball 95 probably % of the time. I think the game we threw the most was against Baden, and it was all play action stuff. And then he let me do the 2-minute offense. So I just took one formation. I said, you guys are lining up here. We're going to run like 4 plays off of it. And he gave me like a few minutes a week to work on that. But once our best wide receiver got hurt against Fenwick week 6, that the effectiveness of that kind of dropped dramatically. So I get a little bit more individual time, which I did not hate. Offensive line coaches always want more individual time. I heard an interesting discussion on Twitter a few weeks back about everyday drills. Do you actually do everyday drills? And I kind of thought about it. I was like, oh, no, I really don't. So I had some drills that we would do probably once a week. And then for me, individual is about fixing problems and knowing those small battles during the week that are coming up, whether it's, hey, I know that this is going to be a tough double team for my guard and my tackle this week, or my tackle and my tight end. So we're going to rep this, and I'm going to try and drop drills that most represent what we are going to see that week. So one, I try and fix problems. Hey, we weren't good at blocking. We weren't good at pulling this week. We weren't getting up into the hole at the right spot. We were overrunning, or we were doing something of that nature. So, hey, I need to design a drill that we can pull up more. So I'm like, okay, well, why don't we just pull into the fence? Well, we can't go any further. So drop a drill, something like that. The one thing that was really different and that I was prepared for, because I'd watched enough double wing stuff, and we had coached against Coach White when my first 2 years at CJ, is that the D line's cut a lot in that. So I wanted to try and figure out a way to safely replicate that. I know Coach Murphy's got some different stuff that he does for it, but what I found was the safest model was just like taking those agility bags and throwing them at their legs off of the snap. And just little things like that were different. Defensively, obviously, didn't change anything. Coach White wanted to in years past, we would have more like an offensive focus day, because you could then get most of your offensive coaches there, and then a defensive coaches day. We didn't have that because he was hired so late. We were a little short staffed compared to what we normally are. So I actually coached DNs for the first time, coached D line for the first time since 2012. I know that a lot of schools will have guys coach both ways, and I had before as well, but we'd been lucky enough to have a large enough staff to be able to coach one side of the ball, and you got a few O linemen that are not going to play defensive line, so you can work little things with them and little fixes with them when they're on defense. But I actually had to coach defense this year, so that was a little bit different. But it's kind of nice to get into that defensive mindset again after being an offensive guy. I was actually a D coordinator in Minnesota the last 2 years. I lived in Minnesota, way up north, and that I know helped me a lot as an offensive, designing an offense, calling an offense, because you can really start to figure out, hey, what are the rules and what are their, hey, they're going to squeeze every time. Well, we can do this, or they're going to try and cage everything, and we should be able to do this. So that really helped me a lot in that area. But go back to the drills. I really like to write down all my drills and design them out on paper. I literally, I don't know if you can see this here. I'll literally there you go, like literally draw out my drills, and then because then I can remember, hey, what did I do? And I have recorded them, but I don't remember exactly where I kept those. I've recorded a few of those drills and tried to keep like drill tape and stuff. But I for this, I did look at a lot of Coach Murphy out in California's drill stuff. As far as the double wing blocking, it's a little bit more shoulder based because it does hit a little bit faster, which I hadn't used. I'm traditionally a double under type guy. I like those hands coming low, but it ends up being a lot like veer blocking. If you look at a school like Fairmont, they're really, I mean, just firing off the ball, real flat backs, head up, firing through. So really trying to preach that to those guys. And you can see it with the young guys. They really buy into it right away. Some of the older guys, it became, they've been taught by me one way. And I actually coached the quarterbacks last year, but the guy we had last year coached is very similar to I do. So they've been coached pretty much just one way for the last 4 years or 3 years. And now they're trying to do this different way. There's a little bit of resistance to it. We had all Southwest Ohio O-line, one O-lineman, one honorable mention. I think we got two first teams, one second team, one honorable mention, O-line. And I had mostly seniors. I only had one junior up front, but by the end of the year, we had two freshmen tight ends starting at for us, which was a little bit of a challenge. But we had a sophomore as well who had never played football before, so it was just teaching him those ways. And you watch him on film, and he does the exact technique you showed, where the other guys revert back to some of the other technique that we had seen. So you're fighting that a little bit, but it wasn't as big of an issue. And going in, I knew about the offense. Like I said, I'd coached against Coach White, and I'm a football guy, so I like all things. Anytime a team sells out on an offense, I find it very fascinating. Like, oh, you're air raid. Well, why? What do you like about it? And, that's real cool. Oh, your wishbone. What do you like? Your split back veer, and not just like a grab bag type of offense, I guess. I always found it interesting. So I had studied this offense before, and I'd actually, when I was doing my student teaching back in Minnesota, was on a single wing offense as well. So I kind of some ideas about it. And if you execute, it's very, very difficult to stop. I know people like, oh, it's a youth offense. Well, yeah, it works in youth too, but teams that run it are tough. I mean, when Earl, I want to say 2011, Coach White set the record for most points in a season, 860 some points or something ridiculous like that. I think Athens might have broke it with Burrow, but I had seen it personally. So the 2 years that we had played Coach White when he was at Thurgood, the first year, my first year in Dayton, actually, we got beat 69-10 by that team. I believe they lost in the state semifinals that year. They were very talented. Then the next year, we ended up playing them and beating them 58-55. So the offense was not the problem for them. in 2012 when we played them. So he scored over 100 points just on me in 2 years. So I knew it worked. And just seeing it firsthand, and let's be honest, coaching in the city can be difficult. And you look at one of the guys that has had proven success year after year. I mean, even when he was at Meadowdale the year before, he was 5-4, and I don't think they'd won a game or won one game in the last 3 years. So he gets that offense clicking, he gets that offense going. And one thing I would say that the offense does that is a little bit different than what I've done in the past is it really, you hold the ball a lot longer, which I think can be very, very helpful for the defense. My first year as OC was when the Oregon go fast stuff was really, really trending. And that's what we did. And we scored tons of points. I had Jacob Harrison at quarterback, and we were scoring, I want to say we were averaging well over 40 points a game that year. But we also gave up a lot of points because your defense is out there the whole time if you're scoring so fast. I think that slowing things down a little bit, holding on to the ball a little bit, I think there is something to be said about that. I know there's statistics with college that says it's not as big of a deal, but when you're talking about high school, I think just holding the ball some, keeping your defense off the field. I mean, if you're playing a team that has an explosive offense, the more you can sit on the ball, I think the better. You guys still got to get first downs, but that can go a long way.
Perfect, Coach. And then there are two final questions for you. Is one, there were several games this year where you either A, didn't complete a pass, or B, didn't even call the pass. And one of them was against your school's, I mean, arguably arch rival.
Right.
What is that experience like? Because I've been there, but what was that experience like for you? And then kind of what was that? I mean, in a perfect world, let's be honest, in this offense, you'd never throw a pass anyways.
Right.
But was that truly by design, or was that, well, we're averaging 4 or 5 yards a carry? We have a lot of third and shorts. We really don't like what kind of were the circumstances that led to in those games to either not call pass or still be successful when you didn't complete one?
So as far as ideologically go, I will always like being balanced offensively. And in 2021, we led the league in passing. And I threw way more than I expect. I'm actually a run guy. The small town I grew up in Minnesota is actually a 9-man football town, and they are run. I didn't end up playing there in high school, but they were always a powerhouse, and they just ran the ball. So I was like, oh, that's how you win games. You run the football. And we threw it in 2021 because we had the kids to do it. I guess I honestly, when it comes down to it, I don't really care. Are you winning or are you losing? That's really what matters to me. If we didn't throw a pass the entire season and we're still playing right now, I'd be pretty happy. It was something that I did tweet out, and it's something I had never thought of. I'm like, I guarantee this is the first time that, well, maybe not. No, they had to have. There's got to be some CJ guy or Chaminade guy that knows that stat off the top of their head. But I would say it at least tied the record. We didn't need to. We got stopped at the end when we were taking a knee, trying to run the clock out, but other than that, they didn't stop us in that game. Versus a school that I'd only beat one other time in 10 years. So much respect to Alter and their coaching staff. What makes it so much special when you beat the team like that is that it just doesn't happen very often. Now it appears that the team to beat in our league is Baden. They've been just rolling, but anyway, yeah, I honestly didn't care. Our quarterback didn't care. He's, like I said, he was a wide receiver the year before. He ended up running. We actually ended up I put in our spread stuff our 2-minute stuff the Thursday before our first game. And we get into the game and we're behind, and he's like, our stuff's not working. It's the middle of the third quarter. And he goes, start running your 2-minute stuff. I was like, now? We practiced it for 5 minutes on air yesterday. He's like, yeah, do it. And we ended up getting like 150, 200 yards of offense off of our stuff. They also hadn't seen it on film.
Yeah, which
I'm very aware of that, but I was a little bit proud. I was like, well, we kind of threw that together, and it was we just called it the exact same stuff that we had run the year before. So we actually scored a touchdown on it. And threw, and I think we only threw for 450 yards this year, and I bet we had close to 200 of them in that first game. So it didn't matter to me. At the end of the day, are we winning or are we not winning? And if we're winning, I don't care at all, honestly. You know, I've had some quarterbacks that obviously this would not be necessarily a quarterback system per se, but that care about stats. So this kid that we had this last year, he doesn't care at all. He just wanted to win, much like me, and that's pretty refreshing to have. But if we didn't throw a pass in any of the games we lost this year and it would have helped us win, I would have been for it.
Now, you mentioned something there, so I'm going to add one more question is, you mentioned you had a good athlete at quarterback and run games. So when you're looking at your quarterback run game, is it literally just quarterback power, quarterback Trojan, or are you running some like power, like, because we played a shotgun double wing team this year, and they would run some quarterback power read in their.
Yes.
So like, what was your, quarterback run game?
So we would run a quarterback power off of that Trojan look, because that tailback would be, so if this is the quarterback, the tailback's coming across, and we would just hit power up in there. That was probably our best quarterback play. You'd also run a quarterback counter off of it. Like I mentioned earlier, is we had trouble with the if that guy was spilling real hard, we couldn't get the buck sweep. So our answer for it was your power read stuff, and power read pitch. I believe Clemson kind of made that famous.
Yeah.
Was probably our best look off of it. So we did run some of that. Yeah. With the quarterback, we ran a couple of plays. One play I kind of drew up was off of our wing look. I was like, well, just because teams would end up chasing the pulling tight end. I was like, well, if they're just chasing the pulling tight end, just have the quarterback pull the ball. So he just fake it to the wing, and he carried it around. We had I think we scored a touchdown off that actually against McNick. And sometimes with this offense, it's really helpful when teams are very disciplined, very well coached, which in the GCL they are. They're gonna read guards. They're gonna do this. They're gonna they're gonna run their scheme. Where you get some schools we played earlier in the season, they're just not very disciplined. So you can run power at them 50 times. But quarterback run game was pretty big for us. Run option. We would also sometimes read the end on trap. I think that was something I hadn't done in years. But so if that extra guy follows, you just pull the ball. And you got the fullback leading out on it. Had a little bit of success with that. We didn't run a ton of trap. I'm not as big of a fan of trap out of the gun as it is under center.
No.
We were talking about
totally
that.
Different. It's a
totally different.
It's almost a completely different play. Trap from the gun and trap from under center, and a lot of that's just because of the timing. I mean, trap's a timing play. You got to get to the line in a certain amount of time, and just doesn't work. And my last question for you is, because we talked, and you obviously didn't punt the last. Actually, I want to make it 2 questions, so we'll just do this and do one. You didn't punt the last 3 games, okay? Which I've been there. I've worked for a double wing head coach as well, and as a DC, and when you would be in your own like 25 or 30, and they'd still go for it, because a lot of times when you run the double wing where it's under center and gun, it's like 4th and 1, 4th and 2, if it's 4th down. So what was kind of, your mental reaction to that? And 2, what did you guys kind of? You had some success and some non-success those last 3 games doing it, but what was kind of y'all's go-to on 4th down? What were your like top 2 calls when you were looking at how to attack people on 4th down when you were in those situations?
So not punting was something, and we were never way backed up. We weren't like the never punt guy, but it would be like our own 40-yard line. So I'm not calling the defense, so I didn't have as much of a problem with that. He rolled the dice a little bit more than Marcus would let me. But so when I was a defense coordinator in Minnesota, my head coach was in charge of kickoff, and he would either squib it or onside kick it just about every time. So I would have to start with a backed up field about every time as a defense coordinator. So I kind of understand that a little bit. But it made my job really easy. I was in charge of punt this year. We did not have any punts blocked. Our punter actually got I think first team GCL or first team Southwest Ohio as a punter, and it would happen to be our quarterback as well. So you put a little bit of an athlete back there and let him roll out a little bit, and it makes defenses tense up some. But it didn't bother me at all, because obviously, as being an offensive guy, I want to have the football, want to get going. Our big calls on 4th down were Trojan. He's run this defense here or offense here for years and years and years, and kind of being those old school guys, they just kind of see it, they kind of just know what's up, and he would ask me, hey, what's the DN doing here? Where's the linebacker here? Those were our big plays. And I mean, straight up, we'd run power. I mean, that's our base play. That's what we're gonna do. If it's 4th and short, we would run that. Wedge wasn't always as good on 4th down, although he would run it on 4th down. If teams are cutting on wedge, it becomes a little bit harder to get as much movement as you want. But that Trojan play where they're all kind of getting squeezed in, and we just kind of hit it that gap over. As long as you pick up any of the run through, and that's really what that second puller is looking for, is that run through. And I'd always, hey, what's your first responsibility? Run through. Correct. If you pick up any run through on blitzes or anything like that, as soon as you get to that edge, and the kid we had got running it, he ran it really well. Another play he liked off of it is our counter cutback. So we get that wing motion coming across, or sometimes he would just leave the wing there and have the wing pull up too. So you'd end up having like 4 pullers to the play, which I thought was pretty cool. Kids do like pulling. I found, at least linemen do. But we would run that counter cutback, and Josiah, our tailback, hit it just so well. And he'd take that ball back, and he'd just put his foot in the ground and hit it right to the backside. So those were probably our 2 plays. I'd say that counter cutback and that Trojan play. We did run a speed sweep as well. We didn't hit that as well as he'd hoped, and Coach White got a little nervous about it, because that is a play you can go backwards on, especially if your wing doesn't make that block, and our wings were a little bit smaller. So you're blocking that outside linebacker type of guy.
Okay. Well, coaches, give Coach a follow on Twitter. His Twitter bio is in there. You can check out his old clinic presentation in the bio as well. Make sure you check out our sponsors, our affiliates, the Patreon, if you want to support the channel at all. I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting anything. Other than that, that's another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.